kind of crazy how much we rely on all our devices these days, huh?
Yeah.
Smartphones, smart speakers.
Right.
I mean, even our TVs are all connected. Like, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But it makes you think, you know?
Yeah.
Like, how much are we actually aware of what all these gadgets are doing
Yeah.
with all our information?
It's the irony of it all, right? Like we're so connected,
Yeah,
but we're so disconnected
that's right.
from the reality of what's going on. It's all about convenience, right? Personalization, instant access, all the stuff we love,
Yeah,
but it does come at a cost.
it does.
Our
Yeah.
privacy.
Yeah.
And that's really what we want to kind of untangle today. So let's say you're out for a run.
Okay.
Tracking your progress on
Okay.
your smartwatch
Right.
seems harmless enough,
Yeah.
but what's actually happening behind the scenes with that data?
Like, I'm out for a run. I've got my watch on. What is it collecting?
Well, I mean, think about it this way. You know, that simple act
Yeah.
of tracking your run is actually generating tons of information.
Wow.
Everything from your location,
Okay.
obviously your pace, to potentially even
Oh, wow.
your heart rate,
Okay.
the exact route you took.
Right.
All of this is being collected.
Okay, so we know it's collecting all this data, but like, how is it organized?
Yeah, yeah.
What are we even talking about when we say data?
Yeah. So we can break it down into a few key categories, all right?
Okay.
We've got personal identifiers,
Mm-hmm.
behavioral data,
Okay.
geolocation,
Okay.
data from all the various sensors that we've got in our smart devices,
Right.
and then even information that's shared between different apps.
All right, let's start with those personal identifiers.
Okay.
Like, it's obvious that companies like Apple and Google have our names, our emails, but it goes deeper than that, right?
Oh, absolutely.
You link everything to like an Apple ID or a Google account,
Right.
and suddenly all this data is connected across all our devices.
Exactly.
Is that level of connection, is that really just for convenience?
It's a good question. I mean, it definitely enhances convenience,
Right.
seamless logins, your data is synchronized,
Yeah.
but it creates this really comprehensive profile of you
Okay.
across multiple platforms.
So that's potentially a problem.
Well, it's a double-edged sword, right?
Okay.
On the one hand, you get those really personalized experiences, the tailored recommendations.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it raises concerns about data security.
Okay.
What happens if this central hub, right,
Yeah.
of all your information
Mm-hmm.
gets compromised?
Right.
The implications could be pretty far-reaching.
Okay, so convenience comes at a cost.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just about like potential security breaches.
Right.
What about all this like behavioral data?
Yes.
Everyone's talking about this behavioral data. Like, I've heard about those Samsung smart TVs
Oh, yeah.
that like track what you're watching.
Mhm.
It's like they're judging my guilty pleasure reality shows. What's the real story there?
Well, it's not so much about judgment, right? It's more about analysis,
Okay.
These companies are collecting all this behavioral data.
Yeah.
Like what you watch, how long you watch it,
Right.
even what you search for
Yeah.
to power those recommendations you get. And of course,
Targeted ads.
yeah, the targeted advertising.
Yeah.
It's the same principle behind those Amazon suggestions that are always so eerily accurate.
Oh yeah, those are creepy.
They know what you bought, what you looked at, how long you lingered on a page,
Yeah.
all this stuff. They're using all that information to try to predict what you might buy next.
Okay, so that makes sense, but it's still kind of unsettling.
It can be.
It's like they're building a digital profile of like every single thing I do.
Yeah, your every whim, yeah.
And then there's geolocation data, which is always in the news, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember reading about fitness tracker data that accidentally revealed sensitive information
Oh, yeah.
about military bases, It seems like even when companies like Fitbit use location data for something like fitness insights,
Right.
there are still these hidden risks.
Yeah, you're hitting on a really critical point.
Okay?
Geolocation data is so valuable.
Right.
It's the backbone of mapping apps, targeted advertising,
Right.
even city planning initiatives
Oh, wow.
that analyze traffic patterns and stuff.
Okay.
But you're right.
Yeah.
The example you gave illustrates the potential dangers, right?
Yeah.
When you combine location data with all these other data points,
Yeah.
the privacy risks become much more significant.
Huh?
Imagine someone piecing together your location history,
Right.
your online activity, your
Yeah.
purchase history.
Yeah.
I mean, that creates a very
Yeah.
detailed and potentially intrusive
Yeah.
picture of your life.
That's kind of scary when you put it that way.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole world of like sensors and IoT devices. Which is where I think things get really interesting
Mm-hmm.
and maybe a little creepy.
Yeah.
We've got smart thermostats,
Right.
learning our temperature preferences, voice assistants like Amazon Echo,
Right.
always at the ready.
Mm-hmm.
Makes you wonder, like, are these things always listening to us?
Yeah, I know. It's
Right.
it's a common concern. And the answer is it's kind of nuanced.
Right.
Most devices aren't constantly recording,
Right.
but they are actively listening
Okay.
for like a trigger phrase.
Okay.
Like, hey, Alexa, or okay, Google.
Right, right.
Once that phrase is detected, then they start recording
Okay.
and sending that voice data to the cloud to be processed.
Okay.
So that's how they're recognizing your commands and
Yeah.
how they're constantly improving, their natural language processing capabilities.
Right, but even when they're not actively recording, they're still collecting data.
Exactly. So your smart thermostat, for example,
Yep.
it's constantly gathering information about the temperature in your home, your heating and cooling preferences, even
Right.
your daily routines.
So it's not necessarily about, like, being always listened to,
Right.
but rather that our devices
Yeah.
are constantly collecting data about our behaviors and preferences
Exactly.
in ways that we might not even realize.
And as we integrate more and more of these smart devices into
Right.
our lives,
Yeah.
this data collection only becomes more pervasive.
Which brings us to app integrations, which I have to admit are the ones that make me the most nervous.
Yeah.
You get like a cool new gadget, right?
Right.
Like a security camera, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then you need a companion app to control it.
Right.
Like Anker's Eufy cameras,
Yeah.
they use, you need an app for that.
Yep.
So you get the convenience of remote monitoring, but at what cost? Are we giving up more than we bargained for?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's where things get a little murky. App integrations can really expand the scope of data collection.
How so?
I mean, think about it.
Right.
The app might need access to your contacts, photos, even your camera and microphone
Wow.
to function properly.
Okay.
And this isn't just limited to smart home devices either,
Right.
Remember the Facebook controversy a few years back
Yeah, with the
about the third-party apps having access to user data?
Right.
That's a prime example
Right.
of how these integrations can go wrong.
It's almost like we're trading our privacy for convenience without even realizing it.
It can feel that way, yeah.
We're so focused on like the shiny new features and seamless integration that we don't stop to think about the implications. So we've got all this data being collected.
Yeah.
But how upfront are companies being about what they're doing?
Yeah.
Are they being transparent about their data practices?
Right.
I mean, we've got companies like Apple, Samsung, Google. They're all taking different approaches.
Yeah, absolutely. Transparency varies greatly from company to company.
Yeah.
Apple, for example, they've been making a real effort to prioritize user privacy
Right.
with features like app tracking transparency
Right.
that give you more control over what data apps can actually track.
Yep.
And their privacy policies are generally pretty clear
Okay.
and easy to understand.
Okay.
Which is a welcome change from all that dense legalese we usually encounter.
That's refreshing to hear.
Yes.
But what about companies like Samsung and Google?
Yeah.
They're major players in the consumer electronics market.
Huge.
But their reputations when it comes to data privacy
Yeah.
are a bit more complicated, I think.
You're right. While they do provide
Yep.
extensive documentation about their data practices,
Yeah.
it can be very complex
Right.
and difficult for the average user to actually decipher.
Okay.
It takes a lot of time and effort
Yeah.
to sift through all those documents and understand what data they're collecting and how they're using it.
Right.
And this lack of clarity,
Yeah.
it can be problematic,
Right.
especially for those who are already overwhelmed
Right.
by the sheer volume of data that's being collected.
It's like they're burying the important information in a mountain of technical jargon.
It can feel that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you have companies like Ugemify,
Right.
which, as I recall, they faced a lot of backlash
They did.
for not being upfront about how they were storing video data from their security cameras.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big deal
Huge.
when you're dealing with something as sensitive as home security footage.
Absolutely. And that incident really highlighted the
Yeah.
need for greater transparency,
Yeah.
particularly from these smaller IoT manufacturers
Right.
who might not have the same level of scrutiny as the big tech giants.
Okay.
Consumers need to know what they're agreeing to
Yeah.
when they set up these devices.
Right.
And companies really have a responsibility to be clear and upfront
Right.
about their data practices.
It all kind of boils down to this question. Is the convenience of these devices really worth sacrificing our privacy?
Yeah.
Are we willing to, like, give up a piece of ourselves, our digital selves,
Yeah.
for the sake of, like, a more streamlined experience?
It's a question each individual needs to wrestle with. There's
Yes.
no easy answer.
It's a question that deserves a deeper dive.
Absolutely.
So stick with us, listeners,
Yeah.
as we explore the complexities of data privacy
Yeah.
in consumer electronics.
It's going to be good.
All
It's a
right.
question with no easy answers, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed.
Right.
Like we're caught in this web, we can't escape.
I feel that.
Yeah.
Like every time you click agree, it's like you're signing your life away.
Right.
But you mentioned something earlier
Yeah.
about, like, we actually have more control over our data
Yeah.
than we think we do. What did you mean by that?
Well, it's not about disconnecting entirely.
Okay.
It's about making more informed choices.
Right.
We can actually take steps
Okay.
to protect our privacy
Right.
without sacrificing,
Yeah.
all the benefits of technology.
Okay. I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
Give me some practical advice. Where do we even begin?
Well, the first step, and I know this sounds tedious,
Okay.
but it's actually reading those privacy policies.
Oh, man.
I know.
Ugh.
They're not exactly page turners,
Yeah.
but they can reveal a lot about what a company is actually doing
Okay.
with your data.
I have to admit, I usually just skim those and click agree.
Mm-hmm.
What should I be looking for?
Okay, look for what types of data they're collecting,
Mm-hmm.
how they're using it,
Okay.
who they're sharing it with,
Right.
and how they're protecting it. For
Okay.
example, if a policy says they share data with trusted partners,
Right.
might be worth investigating
Yeah.
who those partners are and what they're doing with your data.
So a little healthy skepticism is a good thing
Yeah, always.
when it comes to privacy policies.
Absolutely. I mean, you're essentially
Yeah.
entering into an agreement with these companies.
Right.
So it's important to understand the terms.
Right. All right. Reading privacy policies. Check. What else?
Okay. Another important step
Yeah.
is managing app permissions.
Go.
A lot of times apps request access
Yeah.
to way more information than
Yeah.
they actually need to function.
Right. Right.
Take a look at the permissions you've granted
Okay.
and see if anything seems excessive or unnecessary.
Right.
Do you really need that flashlight app
Yeah.
to know your location?
Nope. Probably not.
No, definitely not.
Right.
You're right. It's like we're just on an autopilot,
Mhm.
just clicking allow
Yeah.
without even thinking about it.
Totally.
What about those like privacy-focused tools?
Yeah.
I hear about those are great.
Those worth exploring?
Absolutely. Tools like ad blockers,
Okay.
privacy-focused browsers, they can make a real difference.
Yeah.
Ad blockers, not only do they eliminate those annoying pop-ups,
Right.
but they also prevent those companies from tracking your browsing habits
Okay.
for targeted advertising.
Right. So it's not just about convenience.
Yeah,
It's about, like, taking a stand for our privacy.
absolutely.
Like sending a message to those companies that we're not just passive consumers. We're actively engaged
Yeah.
in protecting our data.
You've hit the nail on the head.
Okay.
It's about reclaiming control and making informed decisions
Right.
about what we're willing to share
Okay.
and what we want to keep private.
All this is great advice, but sometimes it feels like we're fighting a losing battle,
I know.
Data is everywhere,
It is.
and companies are just finding new and creative ways to collect it.
Well, that's true. But awareness is the first step.
Right.
The more we understand about how data is collected,
Yeah.
used, and potentially misused,
Right.
the better equipped we are to
Okay.
protect ourselves.
So knowledge is power, even in the face of this, like data deluge.
It is.
But it's not enough to just be aware, is it?
Right.
We need to act on that knowledge.
Exactly. And there's strength in numbers, as more consumers become aware and
Yeah.
demand greater transparency. And
Right.
control companies will be forced to listen.
Okay.
Look at Apple's app tracking transparency feature.
Right.
That was a direct response
Yeah.
to consumer pressure.
So we're not powerless in this.
No,
We have a voice,
we do.
and we can use it
Absolutely.
to shape the future of data privacy.
Precisely. And it's not just about protecting ourselves either.
Right.
It's about setting a precedent for future generations.
Sure.
As technology continues to advance, the ethical considerations surrounding data privacy are only going to become more complex.
That's a sobering thought,
Yeah.
but it's also motivating.
Mhm.
We have a responsibility to advocate for a future where our digital lives
Yes,
are respected and protected.
absolutely. And it all starts
Yeah.
with making informed choices in the present.
Okay.
Every step we take,
Mm.
every question we ask, every line we read in a privacy policy,
Yeah.
it all contributes to a more privacy-conscious future.
So to our listeners, we've unpacked a lot in this deep dive.
We have.
We've talked about the different ways our devices collect data,
Mm-hmm.
the potential risks to our privacy,
Right.
and some steps we can take
Yep.
to protect ourselves.
Absolutely.
But the conversation doesn't end here.
It doesn't.
We need to continue to explore these issues,
Yeah.
challenge assumptions,
Right.
and demand better from those companies that are collecting our data.
I couldn't agree more.
And that brings us to our final thoughts.
Okay.
And a question
Yeah.
to leave you pondering. We've covered a lot of ground, right?
Yeah.
From personal identifiers
Mm-hmm.
to app integrations.
Right.
And it's clear, like our devices are
Yeah.
constantly gathering information
Mhm.
about us.
Mm-hmm.
And it can feel overwhelming, right?
Right.
Like we're losing control of our
Yeah.
digital selves.
Yeah.
But is it possible to reclaim that control
Right.
without completely disconnecting
Mm-hmm.
from the technologies that we rely on?
That's the challenge, right? Finding that balance
Right.
between the convenience and the connectivity that we've all come to expect,
Yeah.
and the need to protect our privacy.
Right.
It's not about becoming a digital hermit
Yeah.
or anything like that,
Right.
but it's about making,
Okay.
conscious choices
Okay.
about what we share. Right.
And who we share it with.
Okay, you mentioned Apple's app tracking transparency earlier. Can you explain how that works?
Sure.
And like what it means for users?
Absolutely. So app tracking transparency
Okay.
is a feature Apple introduced
Okay.
that requires apps to actually get your permission
Okay.
before they can track your activity across other companies'
Okay.
apps and websites.
Okay.
So essentially,
that's
it
great.
gives you more control over how your data is used for targeted advertising.
Okay.
Before this apps could just track your activity
Right.
without your explicit consent,
Okay.
which a lot of people found intrusive.
Right. Yeah. So it's a step in the right direction, I guess, giving users more say in how their data is used.
Mm-hmm.
But it also kind of highlights the complexity of this whole issue. We're
Yeah.
talking about like a vast ecosystem of apps, devices, companies,
Yeah.
all vying for our attention.
And our data. How do we even navigate this landscape?
That's the $1 million question. It's not easy.
Yeah.
But it starts with awareness,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
We need to understand the types of data that are being collected,
Yeah.
how it's being used,
Right.
and the potential implications for our privacy.
Okay. And then what?
Then we can start making informed choices
Okay.
about the devices we use,
Right.
the apps that we download, and the permissions we grant.
Okay.
It's really up to us.
It's like we need to become data detectives,
Yeah. Yes.
carefully examining the digital footprints
Right.
that we leave behind. But it can feel daunting.
It is, yeah.
It can feel like a really daunting task.
It is.
Where do we even begin?
Just start by asking questions.
Okay.
If a company's privacy policy is unclear or
Right.
confusing,
Mm-hmm.
reach out to their customer support
Okay.
and demand clarification.
Okay.
If an app requests access to information,
Yeah.
that seems unnecessary. Deny that permission.
Okay.
Remember, you have the right
Yeah.
to control your data.
It's about like taking ownership of our digital lives,
Exactly.
not just passively accepting whatever's happening.
Right. It's not a done deal.
All right. But I think there's also like a collective responsibility here.
Yes.
We
Absolutely.
need to like push for
Yeah.
stronger privacy regulation.
Yes.
And hold these companies accountable
Absolutely.
for their data practices.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
We need to advocate for policies that actually prioritize
Right.
user privacy
Right.
and data security.
Okay.
We need to demand transparency from companies
Right.
and hold them to higher standards.
So to our listeners, I think we've delved into this world
We have.
of data privacy in consumer electronics.
Mm-hmm.
We've explored the ways our devices collect data.
Yep.
The potential risks and some steps that we can take to protect ourselves.
Absolutely. But the conversation,
Yeah.
it doesn't end here.
It doesn't, yeah.
This is an ongoing dialogue,
Mm-hmm.
and it's one that we need to have collectively.
Right.
We need to keep asking questions, we need to keep pushing for change, and we need to keep demanding better from the companies that hold our data in their hands.
In a world where data is like the new currency.
It is.
It's more important than ever to be vigilant and informed. We hope this deep dive has empowered you to take control of your digital life and to advocate for a future where privacy is not a luxury, but a right. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.